Welcome to Payoff Pitch Live. I'm Mike Calabrese. I'm joined by Sean Zerillo to break down the Monday slate in the majors. We'll also have Grant Neiffer coming in with his dinger card for Monday. And I'd like to start this by talking about the week that was in the NL. It was a really bad week to be in the NL East. The Fish get swept by the Rockies, and they could go down in the history books as the only team to get swept by potentially the biggest loser in MLB history. And then the Phillies bookend that over the weekend, getting swept by the Pirates in Pittsburgh, a series that I was at. And I'll tell you two things. One, for those not in the know, don't live in the Northeast, have never driven through Pennsylvania, you may think to yourself, oh, going from a Phillies game to a Pirates game, that how long could that drive be? It's one of the worst drives in America, going on I-76 across the state. Awful weather. I also stopped at a Burger King in which they had run out of meat at noon. So it just this desolate, awful place. Never find yourself stuck in Pennsylvania between the two major cities because it's horrific. But then once I got to Pittsburgh, I was just blown away by how great the experience is at PNC Park. I don't know if you've ever been there, Sean, but just one of the most iconic, visually stunning venues, really, in all of sports. And it's just a shame that Bob Nutting, the hillbilly owner there from West Virginia, has just drained the life out of that franchise. It was like 80% Phillies fans. Now the Pirates are able to sweep them, but it's just so clear that with just a little bit of extra money and investment, they could be at least an entertaining product deep into the season. At this point, it's just hanging over them, this feeling of, are we going to be able to keep our top talent? If not, when do we move someone like Paul Skeens? Is it this year, next year, or the year after that? It just kind of drains all the excitement out of a franchise. So I wanted to just get that out first in terms of one of my favorite experiences in terms of a ballpark, being able to take a ferry over to the game, just, going on the incline. The whole experience is top notch there in Pittsburgh. But aside from my experiential weekends, let's talk about one other team. Let's cross over into the AL. Let's talk about the Toronto Blue Jays and their resurgence. This is a team that you did not sell on, you did not give up on. We've mentioned them in the past few episodes as one of those teams that was kind of hovering around 500 that could get it rowing in the right direction. Now they're just 4.5 games out of the AL East. I should say the top of the AL East. The bats are alive. They're top 10 in batting average. They're knocking on the door. They're 12th in slugging. The bullpen is elite, but the starting rotation is lacking a true ace. So I'll pitch this to you in terms of them going out and being aggressive to find a top arm to add to the rotation. Do you think they'll do it? And if so, do they have enough juice to catch the Yankees and win the AL East this year?
I don't think they'll do it. Just because it's not a team that has traditionally given up prospects to go out and acquire guys. Now, they haven't been in the mix, as recently, and they have wanted to be aggressive. They offered Juan Soto a lot of money, ended up reallocating it to Anthony Santander. So this is a team that currently wants to spend and wants to add pieces. It's just a matter of if they'll give up prospects in order to do that. Now, they've had a pitching prospect in the high minors for a long time named Ricky Tiedemann, who just can't manage to stay healthy. They drafted a guy high in the first round last year, I think late in mid-round one, or he might have been the supplemental pick, but Trey Savage, who's been absolutely crushing it in high A, he struck out 88 of the 196 batters he has faced in high A this year. That is a strikeout rate of 48%. It's a guy that many expected to kind of fly through the minor leagues. You saw Hurston Waldrop kind of fly through the minors for the Atlanta Braves. Savage was expected to kind of do the same thing. And I think there is a chance, even though he's in high A currently, that we see this guy in the majors by the end of the year, especially if the Blue Jays are going to be competitive. Now, packaging other prospects, Alan Roden, Savage together for a starting pitcher, for a major league caliber starting pitcher, I think they would want a guy who's under control for at least next year. The Blue Jays are probably not going to give up prospects for rentals. I'm not sure I think Sandy's a free agent, so they would want a guy who's at least under team control in 2026 if they're going to go out and trade for somebody, especially now that they've signed Vlad to an extension. It seems like they're going to let Bo Bichette walk ultimately. I've seen rumors that Bo Bichette is on the trading block. I doubt that that actually ends up happening, considering they are 5 games above 500 right now. But in terms of the math and the Jays and the Rays, who have the same record, and last week I said, I think one of the Jays or Rays going to end up making the playoffs. By Oopsie. Oopsie thinks all three are getting in. Oopsie has the Yankees at 97%, the Rays at 59%, and the Jays at 57%. But Oopsie is by far the highest on Tampa Bay of the publicly available projection systems. Everybody else has the Jays between 42% and 35%, but Fangraphs has the Jays at 52%. Pacoda has the Jays at 61%. Oopsie, as I said, has them at 57%. The Bat has them at 52%. And ATC is the one projection that does not like the Jays to make the playoffs. They have them at 41% right now. But as I said, Jays, Rays, identical records. Jays on average north of 50% to make the playoffs by all publicly available projection systems, except for one. One of them has them, though, above 60%. And the Rays closer to 45% on average. And you look at the odds right now for these two teams, Jays about plus 125, Rays about plus 145. So I think the Jays are the much better value bet of the two. And in fact, I think they offer clear and actionable value to make the playoffs right now at plus money. If you take the average of those projections, as I said, you're going to get close to about 55%. So if you're going to set your edge bar at 5% in order to make a bet, I think it's very reasonable to take the Jays at plus money right now. Never mind getting plus 125 for them to make October. This is a very good bullpen, very good team defense, top five of both defensive runs saved and outs above average, and above average offense, 11th in WRC plus. I think they're actually likelier to add to their lineup than they are to add to their starting rotation. I think you can just go out and acquire offensive pieces just a little bit cheaper than you can arms. They are below average defensively at both shortstop. Can't really fix that, but then also right field. So I think they go out and get an outfielder if they're going to upgrade somewhere, or they get a third baseman and they stick Addison Barger out in right field. But offensive upgrade for Jays, I actually think is likelier than the pitching upgrade, and I do think they are a good bet right now to make the postseason. Brennan Little, probably been my favorite relief pitcher aside from Randy Rodriguez to watch this year. I think he's second or third in baseball in swinging strike rate. Just looks like he's befuddling hitters in every at bat, and he doesn't throw particularly hard, and his breaking stuff is very loopy. So it seems like he should be hittable, but it's like he's pulling a magic trick every time he throws a pitch. So I really enjoy watching Hoffman and Little and this Jays bullpen, which is ranked in the top three for expected FIP, strikeout minus walk rate virtually all season, much better than anybody could have possibly forecasted this bullpen would be. But as you said, the depth and the starting rotation depth is the concern, and Max Scherzer's on the mend. They really need somebody to replace the innings for Bowden Francis because Bassett's been effective, Galson's been effective, Eric Lauer's been effective in their bullpen games. But every time they have to run out Bowden Francis and he goes 3 innings, and then you have a bullpen game the next day, like you're killing your bullpen 2 days in a row, and then you need Gausman and Bassett and Berrios to reset it. So yeah, I think they actually have like enough pitching, if they get to the postseason to be competitive. I'd rather them get another bat if they're going to choose anything.
All right, let's look at your Monday card. We're going to go down from best bet, favorite underdog. You actually have two dogs for today, and the rest of your card before we get to Grant Neiffer's home run props to end the show. We're going to start with the fact that the Phillies continue to reel. I mentioned they got swept by the Buccos. They're 1-9 in their last 10. They're suddenly 4.5 games back in the NL East, looking up at the New York Mets. And the honest assessment is this lineup is ice cold. They've been held to 2 runs or less in 6 of their last 8 games. So sending Wheeler to the hill here doesn't solve all of their ills. He's coming off the one missed start from his paternity leave, but it also doesn't hurt that the Cubs have one of the best road records in the bigs. Actually, I believe statistically by win percentage, they are number one in the majors in terms of their record away from Wrigley. Any other thoughts on the Cubs at this price point in the neighborhood of plus 130 to take down the Phillies here?
Yeah, I wonder if, going over to Japan, playing like a couple of games in Japan to start the year, a little bit of team bonding, then coming back. I wonder if that helps, a team just like feel a little bit better about playing on the road, having played the most extreme road conditions and then coming all the way back. But as you mentioned with the Phillies offense, ice cold without Bryce Harper. Harper on the IL with wrist inflammation after getting hit by that pitch. I do think this is a below average offense without Bryce Harper in it. Above against the lefties, still above average, about a 103 WRC plus, and they are drawing Matthew Boyd today. So technically still above average in terms of how I project them, but against righties, I'd make this offense at 98 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So I do view it as a significantly worse offense without Bryce Harper. He does make a humongous impact when he is in or out of this lineup, and the Cubs' clear offensive advantage. They've been fourth against righties this year, sixth against lefties, but a 122 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. They're going to work Wheeler. They're going to drive up his pitch count, and they're going to try to knock him out of this game as early as they possibly can, because the Phillies bullpen has also been below average without Jose Alvarado. Since the Alvarado suspension in mid-May, the Phillies are 24th in expected FIP, a 443 expected FIP, and they're 23rd in strikeout minus walk rate, and obviously going to have a little bit more trouble getting left-handed pitching out or left-handed hitters out with Matt Strahm as your main effective lefty. And obviously Alvarado is being used as a closer, not so much as a specialist, but it does sort of change the way that you have to use Strahm. You really can't save Strahm for the ninth inning. You kind of have to use Romano and then use Strahm, pick your spots where you're going to use him earlier in the game. So it just affects, the roles that everybody has. Oftentimes we see this like one pitcher, one quality pitcher gets shifted out of their role. Every other bullpen reliever is forced to go into a new role. And as a result, it's a change for literally everybody, even though one guy is missing. So I think people overlook that fact. Like changing roles, has a big impact on guys. They're not used to doing what they're doing. They're getting up at a different time of the game, and results can be a little bit different. But, really the gap between Zach Wheeler and Matt Boyd, I don't think is as drastic as you might expect once you actually look at the underlying numbers. So there's a 1 run gap between their expected ERA marks, Wheeler at 2.3, Boyd at 3.3. It's about a 6% gap in strikeout minus walk rate, 25% versus 19%. But underlying FIP projections across all publicly available projection systems view that 1 run gap closer to a half-run gap. They have Wheeler projected between a 3.1 and 3.3 FIP, and they have Boyd projected between a 3.5 and 3.8 FIP. So at the low end, you're talking about a half-run gap, between 3.15 or 3.1 and 3.5, and then 3.8 and 3.4 on the upper end. Again, a half-run gap, 4/10 of a run. So even though the expected ERA of full run better for Wheeler, I think he is due to pitch just slightly worse the rest of the way, get hit a little bit harder. I think he's faced a relatively soft schedule. Said he's still Zach Wheeler, one of the best pitchers of his generation. But once this game gets to the bullpens, I do think the Cubs potentially have the pitching advantage and obviously the offensive advantage as well. The one piece I didn't mention is the defense. This is a humongous differential in terms of defensive quality. The Cubs outfield just absolute one of one in terms of defensive quality. They have 3 potential Gold Glovers roaming out there. And on the year, Cubs, I believe top 5 above both defensive runs saved and outs above average. Yeah, they're 3rd and 9th in defensive runs saved, 9th and outs above average. But the Phillies, 29th and 23rd respectively, give up a lot of free outs, 4th outs to the opposing team and make a lot of mistakes in the field. So I think the Cubs have a lot of advantages here, basically every advantage aside from the starting pitching matchup. And I don't think the gap between the two starters is as wide as even the expected ERAs would say.
So we turn now to your favorite underdogs. Actually, all of your sides here for Monday are dogs. We're going to look at the Brewers hosting the Braves, going off at about plus 160. Aaron Savale on the bump here. He's looked pretty good since returning from his hamstring injury. 3 straight competent starts. Assuming he gives you 5 or 6 innings and let's say allows 3 runs, do you think this Brewers lineup can make Sale work and get to that Atlanta bullpen by the 7th inning? Because that's clearly the Braves' vulnerability, given that Sale has been locked in for nearly 2 months at this point. Anything else in terms of the Brewers Braves situational angle that you like, whether it's travel, whether it's quick turnarounds at plus 150 or better? It seems like that's the right price point for you to get in on the home underdog.
Yeah, I think the Brewers can potentially score runs off a Sale. They are in their better split. They're 15th against lefties, so league average, but 24th against righties. So I think the Brewers could potentially scrape across some runs here. But overall, I'm demoralized by the Braves, and the Braves, I would imagine, have to be demoralized. I was on their money line last Thursday, that 6-run blown 9th inning lead. Probably the worst loss I've ever had betting this sport. I've never given up 6 runs in the 9th inning. I've blown 6-run leads. I've blown 8-run leads before on money lines, but never all in the 9th inning and mostly with 2 outs from a 99.9% win probability. So that was awful. And then I had a total blow up about 5 minutes later. And then I had the Mets collapse a little bit after that. And somebody who tails my bets texted me because they also had the Rangers money line that night when they gave up that 2-run walk-off infield single against the Rays. So I don't know how that person managed to have an even worse day luck-wise than I did. But yeah, that Braves money line loss, an absolute all-timer, absolutely horrific, ruined my day. But in terms of like their attitude coming into this game, right? They blew 2 of the 3 games that they then had in San Francisco. I believe they got walked off on Saturday. They also lost the game in extras that they never led, but they came back to tie it at 4, I think, after being down. And then they blew another lead yesterday on Sunday. So I can't imagine what the vibes are in the Atlanta locker room right now. They're trying to probably just get back to 500 at this point and then progress from there. But they're turning more into sellers than they are buyers at this point. And like talked about Braves futures constantly throughout the season as being good value. This team keeps losing games and falling further and further away for the playoffs. Not going to sit here and say every single projection system still projects value because it would be a waste of your time and nothing has really changed. The odds will keep improving, the projections will keep going down, but relative to the projections and the odds, the value is still going to be there. At what point does this team turn it around? I mean, the vibes have to be absolutely miserable. Now, yes, obviously, Chris Sale, a better starting pitcher than Aaron Savali. The bullpens, though, and you mentioned it, Mike, the Atlanta bullpen has been horrific lately. Projection wise, I think I'd prefer Atlanta's bullpen, but in terms of performance over the past 30 days, Milwaukee's bullpen has actually been pretty good. That's why they've gotten the record they have recently. That's why they've played better of late. Sixth in expected FIP, 14th in strikeout minus walk rate over the past 30 days. Atlanta 23rd by both metrics. They keep blowing leads. It's absolutely excruciating. So I made this game about plus 135. I would bet Milwaukee down to plus 145. This opened plus 160 last night. And then you factor in, obviously, the demoralization of the Braves too, but the travel, the rest coming from San Francisco overnight. Brewers, I believe, remaining at home. So, yeah, I think it's a good spot. I think it's a good split for the Brewers. Hopefully, we get this game competitive into the bullpens and Milwaukee takes over from there.
The last one on your card, another dog, Seattle going off at plus 145 in the desert against the Diamondbacks. The M's have really struggled as of late, but Emerson Hancock could be a good buy low option at this price point, in your opinion. After a rocky start to the season, he's pitched well for the better part of a month, really. Is this a pro Hancock play, or are you fading veteran righty Merrill Kelly?
This is mostly just a numbers play. Like, I couldn't find anything here that I'm in love with in terms of the matchup. I've never been a huge Emerson Hancock guy. I do think he is pitching better of late, and I really trust Seattle in terms of pitching development overall. They tend to optimize their guys. They protect their arms well in terms of injury. You see Kirby going down in spring, coming back, looked great yesterday. I would expect Logan Gilbert, who they shut down, to look good after he comes back ultimately. They really do not have guys who go out for a full year with Tommy John. I think they monitor their arms very closely. Even Bryce Miller, who's not pitching that well this year, he's dealing with a back issue. It's not an arm issue. So I think Seattle really good at both pitcher development, starting pitcher development, but then also protecting those guys and keeping them healthy. And even though Hancock, a highly talented arm who they haven't really been able to figure out, I would just continue to give them time with him because command seems to be his biggest issue. The stuff is there at times, but he just can't locate. And that could be a problem, against Arizona's offense, which does walk a ton. But the dome is going to be closed here tonight. It will not be open. So offense should be a little bit suppressed in Arizona. When they open that thing up, you get those 15-11 games like they had with the Dodgers when Roki Sasaki started there. The ball just absolutely flies out of that yard. Plays a little bit closer to, a 9-run, 8.5-run average when that dome is closed. So a little bit more of suppressed offense. Two strong offenses versus right-handed pitching, so we could still see some runs here. Arizona third, Seattle sixth against righties. And the defensive metrics, like defensive run saved, prefers one team, outs above average prefers the other. So again, like I can't point to anything super specifically here. Seattle's bullpen has been a little bit better of late, though. So again, if we can get this game competitive to the bullpens, tied, or Seattle down a run going to the bullpens, I do trust their bullpen a little bit more. And based upon rest over the weekend, I think they are a little bit better rested just because Arizona had that doubleheader in Cincinnati on Saturday, not an actual doubleheader. They had to finish up a suspended game from Friday, play those final 3 innings, ended up going to extras, and then finish a full another game out. So basically playing a game, 2.5 games in the past 2 days, as Seattle playing 2 games in the past 2 days. Seattle didn't have to use their bullpen quite as aggressively. So I made the money line about plus 129. I would bet Seattle at plus 140 or better. Wasn't a huge edge when when this opened up last night. It was about plus 145 to plus 140 on the low end. So I just took the plus 145. But yeah, Seattle plus 140 or better. The one non-dog that I might consider betting today is the Pittsburgh Pirates at about minus 110. Yuri Perez coming back off the IL. The market clearly liked Miami overnight, which is why I would consider betting Pittsburgh now at about minus 110. Yuri walked about 11 guys in, I think, roughly 22 innings or so in his minor league rehab appearances. He's been rehabbing the whole season in an effort to get him back to the bigs. But, as we regularly discuss with guys coming back from Tommy John surgery, command always going to be the slowest thing in terms of returning. So I do think maybe Yuri over on walk props tonight against the Pirates. Something like that could be of interest. But Pirates do show a slight edge up to about -110 as well.
Before Grant Neiffer gives us three players that are likely to go yard tonight, we're going in the opposite direction for your final play. We're going an under in the Rays Red Sox game. And I feel like we've had a play one way or another on Bayo in like his last five starts. So like, why not just keep this trend going? But it takes two to tango on a total, as we know, and really just a question that I want to have to be open-ended, not just for this episode, but really until he gets it going in the right direction. What is going on with Shane Baz? He has given up 9 home runs across 6 starts in May. So this fly ball home run ratio is totally out of whack. Is there any chance he's going to find his 2024 form? And what's going on under the hood that has caused him to really crash out so hard this season?
Yeah, I can't really tell you aside from maybe the weather in Tampa Bay. I'm trying to look at where the homers have come. I mean, two came in Houston, two came in Miami, so I can't point to it all being the weather. Two in Toronto as well. I can't point to it being the weather in Tampa. I was thinking that might be the case. I've tried to figure it out. Shane Baz is a guy I've always been high on. Maybe he's injured under the hood and he's just not telling anybody about it because when guys start giving up homers in bunches, and there's no explanation, there's no dip in velocity, there's no anything, usually it points to an underlying injury. I remember with Max Scherzer, when his injury issues started first cropping up in Washington, his home run rate like absolutely exploded and everything else under the hood looked fine. But the home run rate just out of nowhere, like completely imploded. And those really just come down to mistake pitches, not executing pitches. Guys can get away with mistakes too, but when you're giving up home runs in bunches, it's probably because you're hanging stuff over the plate, leaving stuff over the middle where normally you do not. Now, the location plus, I want to see how his location plus metrics have trended throughout the year because that would kind of indicate, whether we should be concerned or not. And earlier in the year, 106, 102, 111 first 3 starts. Then it dipped into the 90s, into the 80s, came back for a couple starts, dipped into the 80s again against Toronto, against Miami, in the starts where I said he gave up 2 home runs each. Past 2 starts, 102 and then 112 against Texas. So coming off of a start, 104 stuff plus, 112 location plus, 114 pitching plus, I'm not really concerned about what's coming out of his hand. 2.8 body RA in that outing. I'm just concerned about the locations and the consistency from start to start. And yeah, maybe that is related to an injury. Maybe the consistency in the command isn't there because there is an underlying injury. And, even with Bayo, I mean, I remain extremely concerned about him blowing up. This under is bet because of weather. I would make this total about 10 runs on a weather neutral day at Fenway. I make it about 8.3 runs today because we have 60-degree weather in June, and 7 to 9 mile an hour winds blowing in from right field. So this does suppress the run scoring environment for me. Yes, Bayo can blow up. Yes, Shane Baz can blow up. I'm extremely concerned about both of them. I'm hoping we can get this to the bullpens and calm down a little bit. 5 runs, get it to the bullpens with an under 9. The Tampa Bay defense and bullpen has been well above average, and I think that has been what has helped their resurgence in getting them to a 35-30 record. 6th in expected FIP, 9th in strikeout minus walk rate. Boston 12th, 14th respectively on the season, so still above average. And then Tampa, in terms of events for unsaved, they rank 4th. They're 10th in outs above average. Boston, again, closer to league average, 14th, 17th respectively. So the bullpens and the defensive quality about the same in terms of how they rank. Tampa Bay, about a top 5 team. Red Sox, closer to league average. The starting pitchers scare the absolute crap out of me. The one thing that I think could help Shane Baz today and could potentially hurt the Red Sox offense today and help us get this game under is the Sunday Night Baseball hangover effect. We mentioned this a few times this season, but teams coming off of Sunday Night Baseball, historically, when they remain in the same city, when they're either hosting a game and remaining home or playing the 4th game of a 4-game series and remaining in the same road city, they reduce their average run scored by about a tenth of a run per game. But when teams have to travel to a new city and have that overnight travel after Sunday Night Baseball and the quote unquote Sunday Night Baseball hangover, they lose about 4/10 of a run per game off of their season average. So I do think Boston, late night game, scored a bunch of runs against the Yankees in the Bronx. then had to get on a plane, go back to Boston. Now you're taking on another game tonight after getting back home. I do think there is a reduction in offense overall, and hopefully we can get this game to land on 8 or below. I projected it at 8.3, so under 9 up to minus 115 would be a bet for me. And then the other totals I'm monitoring for today, I'm going to wait for weather, but I just want to throw these out there in case Grant is on any of these in terms of dinger props, in case they align. The Padres and Dodgers over 8, the Pirates over 8.5, less likely to play that considering how cold both of those offenses have been. And the same with the Phillies. The Phillies over 7.5 as well. Don't love it considering the quality of the Phillies offensively, but I lean over on all those. I just want to see umpires before firing on any of them. So Dodgers, Pirates, and Phillies all over, but borderline and waiting.
Here at Payoff Pitch, we dig the long ball, and no one better to serve up a few than Grant Neiffer. He's got 3 on his Monday card. Grant, take it away.
All right, thanks, guys. Let's get right in this. Doing mine over at FanDuel today, around 110 to 1. Don't have any boost. Maybe they pop up with one later. I don't know, but I still like this without any boost. Got 3 guys. Let's get right into the first one. Ronald Acuna to hit home run plus 330. You can find this at around plus 350 at other spots, but I still like it at plus 330. Gets a matchup versus Savale. Savale, a decent matchup overall for righty power, giving around 1.36 home runs per 9 over the course of his career. Solid fly ball numbers, solid hard contact numbers. Acuna, great hitter, had a solid start at the beginning of the season when he came back from injury. Has tailed off a little bit. K rate is up there, but the power is absolutely there with over a 17% barrel rate on the season. Really like him in this spot. Next up, Brent Rooker, who's cost me far too much money this season, but I don't really care when I'm getting a matchup versus Kikuchi. Kikuchi been better this season, but the underlying numbers show he's due for some negative regression, sitting around a 3 ERA, over a 4 xFIP, so the regression should be coming. Been a fantastic matchup for righty power in his career, giving up around 1.6 home runs per 9. Weather isn't too bad over in LA today in Rooker. Even though he's striking out more this year, the underlying power numbers are still good. He's going to come around at some point. The guy has far too much power to stay down for too long. I think it's coming. I'm going to keep betting him, and I like his odds at plus 330 today going up against Kikuchi. Lastly, Ketel Marte plus 500. You can get this around plus 525 at other spots, but I still like it at plus 500. This is one of my favorite bets on the day. The guy is absolutely mashing this year. 12 home runs in 39 games. Barrel rate, the best of his career. The hard contact, fly ball numbers, all great this season. Gets a matchup versus Hancock, which Hancock has historically been a better matchup for righty power, but he should have around average splits with his pitch mix. Grades out as a great matchup for lefty power. Playing over in Arizona, so that's a much worse ballpark for him, or a little bit worse ballpark for him. For power, Marte's just been far too good, and in this spot, plus 500 odds are just silly. So parlay all 3 of them together, get 110 to 1 odds. Loving it. I'm out of here. Bye, guys.
That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard from Sean or Grant in today's episode, look for the quick slip links in the episode description. And don't forget to download the award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star review and rating wherever you listen to the pod. And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in the episode description of this podcast to help you sign up for that. We'll be back tomorrow with more best bets. That means underdogs, best bets, the rest of Sean's card as well. For Sean Zerillo and Grant Neiffer, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.